Welcome to day 2 here. We are on 9.2, solving a quadratic equations graphically. If you don't have the worksheet, remember it's in the Schoology folder. You can go download it there. But here we go. So the values where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Remember, we talked about these are actually the x-intercepts here. But in terms of our vocab words, we refer to these as zeros, okay, or roots. These are also the solutions of the quadratic equation. All right, so how many zeros does this graph have? We can see that it crosses the x-axis 2 times there. So there are 2 zeros. Here, this is hitting the graph 1 time. Sometimes this is actually referred to as a double root. So for example, this might be x minus 2, or actually I should say it would be x plus 2 times x plus 2. So as a factor, you would see something like this, where you get 2 answers, but they're actually the same thing. It's a double root, but this actually has 1 solution, okay, or 1 root and 1 0. And this graph, you can see, doesn't attach to the x-axis at all. This has no solutions. Now, in terms of a graph, these numbers, there is actually a solution technically, but it's an imaginary number. So you might get something like the square root of -21 as your solution. We don't have a real number that represents this value. So we see there's no real solutions, okay? But when you get to Algebra 2, you'll talk about the imaginary number system and how we use that in mathematics, higher level mathematics, and how that can be used. Okay, so our 3 possible solutions to the quadratic equation. When there's 2 solutions, okay, the parabola crosses the x-axis twice. 1 solution, right? The parabola just touches the x-axis once at one spot at one point, okay? Or there's no solution where the parabola does not cross the x-axis. So it's completely above or below that value, okay? So remember, the roots of the zeros, okay, are where if you are standing on the x-axis, all right, that means that your y value is 0. So whenever we're trying to find a 0 or a root, we always want to plug 0 in for y. We want to set it equal to 0. So for 2a, we want to graph the parabola x squared minus 4. F of x, or y, right, equals x squared minus 4. So we're going to go to our TI calculator. Now, pause real quick. All right, if you didn't see the previous video, if you head over to tieducation.com/en, and if you click on the COVID-19 support, you can click download now, and you'll be able to download, we're going to go to students, a free version of the CX computer software. So this is the one we want, okay? And you can get a 6-month subscription for free, okay? If you have any issues, call this number, 1-800-TI-CARES, all right? And they'll be happy to, they're super helpful, okay? Just put your email address in and you should be able to download it. But if you have any issues, call that number. Like if you used it before and it won't let you do it again, just call that number and let them know what's going on and that you need access to it. They're really good to work with. Okay, back to ours. So we're doing x squared, so x squared, and then minus 4. Just want to double check that. Indeed we are. Remember, we're going to get our parabola. So we can see once again that the roots, right? We can see where the minimum number is on our table. So we know it's at the x value of 0. But if we go to the calculator, because we can't tell, just to review, analyze graph, minimum. We're going to click, take our mouse here, right? And go and click 1 time off to the side. All right. Then we're going to grab a mouse, right, and drag it over, okay, and move it on the other side. And there is our, now this number is crazy because it's like this, but technically this is 0, okay? It's giving you a number that's super close to 0. This is -0.001 6 zeros and then 1, 2, 3. I don't know why it's giving us this weird number, but it is 0. Okay, weird. But we're going to make a table. Okay, so remember we talked about the table. All right, so we're going to put 0 in the middle. We're going to put -1, -2, -3, and then 1, 2, 3 above and below. Now, if we plug 0 in for x, right, we're essentially going to get -4. Okay, if I plug 1 in for x, 1 squared minus 4, right, is 1 minus 4. This is -3. That means it's going to be -3 on the other side here. If we put 2 in for x, right, 2 squared minus 4, 2 squared is 2 minus 4 is 0. This is also going to be 0. And then if I put 3 squared in minus 4, this is 9 minus 4. This is 5. Okay? And if you wanted to, you could try 4 to see if it'll fit on your graph. But 4 squared minus 4 is 16 minus 4 is 12, right? That's equal to 12. That's going to be off the graph. We're not going to have enough room. The point's going to be off here somewhere. Remember, you're not allowed to graph a point that is off of your graph, okay? So you can't go off the grid, all right? So we're only going to graph these 7 points here. So we're going to go and take our pen now. We'll put a point at -3, 5. Okay, we're going to go to -2, 0, -1, -3. And apparently we're going to go -0.0000000123, no, 0, right? -4. And then I don't have to look at the table anymore. I'm just going to go over 1 and I'm going to match the point on the other side here. So remember, we have that symmetry about our graph. Now I know the other number is going to be somewhere like over here. I'm just going to put a point so we kind of get the idea of where it's supposed to be. So when you're graphing your line, make sure your graph doesn't cross over this line x equals 4 until it gets up over here somewhere is where it's going to cross. So we want to make sure we draw our line here, this parabola, correctly. So I like to start from the bottom where 0 is and then draw my line going up and at that point. Okay? I'm not actually going to put a point on this side. You can kind of see I'm heading up in that direction without crossing over. It doesn't have to be super pretty. If you're not happy with it, go ahead and draw it again. Okay, but it should be pretty close. This stylus here is not my friend today. All right, as long as it doesn't look crazy bad, we're okay. Remember, for the graphing purposes for the exam, we need x and y. We need our line to stretch to the top of the graph or have arrowheads. We also don't need to label the equation unless there's 2 of the same type of graph, so 2 parabolas on the same graph. But I would say get in the habit of labeling, just because if there is 2 and you forget, that would be a graphing error. You can always label, they won't take off points. All right. And then we want to use our equation to figure out the roots. Now I can look at the graph, okay? I can look at the graph over here, and I can see that it's crossing here and here. Now I may want to redraw this one more time because this is not going through that point and it should. So while your graph is probably fantastic, mine is apparently super hard to do. We're going to start up here and work our way back. See if that works better. All right, I hear you clapping for me over there. Good. So, all right, there's our graph. Y equals x squared minus 4. We'll do f of x because that's what the equation says, but same thing in terms of what we're representing here. And then we know that the roots are going to happen at these 2 points. Now, it's not a point. It's the x-intercept, the value of the x-coordinate at that spot. Okay? So what I want to do is look at the y-coordinate and see when it's 0, right? It's 0 here, which means that this is one root and this is the other. All right. There are instances where this graph is not going to cross at whole integer values. For that purpose, we can use menu, analyze graph, and 0, and do the same thing we did for the minimum maximum, click and drag, and it will give us the coordinates. So maybe they're not nice numbers, they're decimals, okay? They just happen to intersect in between these 2 whole numbers. We have to do that for each 0, or if we really just want to get like an idea of what they are, what I would recommend you do is go in the middle first. So now as I stretch to the right, it gives me that 0, the 0 on the right side. And if I go in the other direction, it gives me the 0 on the other side. Once I click though, that's it. I have to redo it, okay, for the other side. So there are my two solutions to the graph, okay? So the zeros, remember we're gonna write our answer in set notation, right? So the set of, and then we just put down -2, comma 2. And there's my solution. Now I went into really good detail on this one to talk about everything that could possibly happen here. So these next questions we do, we're gonna go a little bit quicker here, okay? So on the back page, we got 2 more. We're gonna do the same thing. Now, if you don't have a calculator, you're like, man, I don't have a calculator. What am I gonna do? Well, good thing we have this thing called the axis of symmetry, right? -b over 2a. So I know that b is that -2 and a is a number in front, which is 1. So this is going to equal negative of -2 over 1, which is really positive 2 over 1. And so the axis of symmetry is 2. Remember, this tells me that 2 is going to go in the middle of my table, and then I'm going to put numbers above and below. 0, 1, -1, 3, 4, and 5. Now, some of these points may not fit in the graph if they're too big, and that's fine. I might need to go do a 6th one if need to be. We'll see what happens. And then I just plug in. So the easiest one to plug in is 0. If I plug 0 in for x squared, that's 0. 0 in for x is 0. And then this just becomes -3, which means 4 is also -3, right? If I plug in 1, I get 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 3. So this is 1, right? Minus 2 minus 3. So that's -4. And this is -4. If I plug in 2, 2 squared minus 2 times 2 minus 3, okay? So we get 4 minus 4 minus 3. That just look weird. Pause. All right, I just figured out what happened. Did you notice? Did you yell at me and then say, why does he keep going? Let's go back and fix it. This is supposed to be 2a, which means we're supposed to be 2 times 1. So this is actually a 1 here. That's the middle of our chart. So these points are off, right? Instead of 2 being in the middle, 1 should be in the middle. So we'll redo the chart here in blue. Okay, so 1 should be in the middle. That would make sense why it seemed like it wasn't working. Okay, so, and then above it would be 0, -1, -2. All right, and then 2, 3, and 4. So, all right, if we plug 0 in, remember we get -3 and then -3. We talked about if I plug -1 in, right, I get -4. Okay, now we're working here. All right, if we put 3 in, got it? 3 squared minus 2 times 3 minus 3. So that's 9. Minus 6 is 3. Minus 3 is 0. So this is 0 and 0. And if we put -2 in, or 4 in, 4 squared minus 2 times 4 minus 3. Just showing you how you can do this on a calculator here. That's 16 minus 8, which is 8 minus 3 is 5. And then this is 5. If you got a calculator, we're just going to type it in and go right to the table, right? So I got an idea of where this is going to go. I got my points above and below, and I can see the next one's 12. That's -3. That's going to go off. But that's how we're doing it without a calculator, okay? So going to my table, starting at, and we're going to go 1, -4, right? 0 is -3, both sides, okay? -1, 0, -1, 0, and then we're going up to 5, and 1 up to 5 on the other side. Okay. This one over here. All right, then we draw on our curve. Let's see if we can improve on last time here. So from the bottom up, We know we're going to be at 12 again, so we don't want to cross that line until we get up there. And here we'll go down. Oh, we did it. We sneezed or something. Swift, easy, motion. Yeah, we'll take it. All right. And then we can see once again our solutions are going to be here and here. Remember, for full credit, we're still going to label our graph, but you technically don't have to because there's only one graph at this location or on this graph. All right, we're still going to label solutions, minimum, right? Axis of symmetry going in the middle. Remember, that's an x equals. All right, and we're good to go. So the solutions, right, are at -1, 0, and 3, 0. So the solution, right, happens at the point -1, 0, but it's actually just -1 and 3, not the actual whole point, just the x coordinates. All right, I encourage you to pause this one. Try this one on your own. Now, this is going to be weird because the axis of symmetry is not going to show up on your calculator right away. So remember how you can find it on your own first, right? And then make a table. So pause it, try it on your own, and then come back and check it out. All right, seriously, pause, do your thing. All right, so hopefully you're at least here. We did our axis of symmetry. We got 2.5. We put that in the middle. We picked whole values, whole number values above and below. So not 2.5, but or 1.5, but 2, 1, 0. And then we can use our chart, our calculator to get the rest if we need to. And then remember, we talked about the fact that at this point, when I do analyze graph, this is the minimum that I'm going to want to do that, and then it'll spit out that number. So it's 2.5, -0.25, so -0.25. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and graph all of these. So I know I can't graph the vertex great, but we'll do the best we can. So we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2.5, and -0.25. So just about there. And then we're headed back up, matching our points on the other side. And remember, if you check the table, we can see like the next one here is going to be off the graph. So we're not going to graph it. Okay, so once again, we're swinging up this way. That is way too big here. Of a line. All right. We got our equation if we need it. Y equals x squared minus 5x plus 6. Remember, you either extend off the graph, throw the arrows on, and then we can find our two solutions based off of where it's crossing off our table, or once again, off the graph with our menu, right? Now, you want to click on this side. That's why that's coming up. Menu, analyze graph, and then 0. Okay, so we can see 2, 0, or on the other side. Now, the reason it said that, and the reason I'll show you that again, let me get rid of the table real quick, is because if you do a 0 and you don't go all the way to the left here, it can't find one. Okay, so that's why it says there isn't one inside those bounds. So you got to make sure you go over, and there's our two answers. So solution set 2, 3, somewhere on there, and we're good to go. Okay, all right, last one. Try this one on your own for serious. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to show you the answer at the end. Okay, so you pause it too. Pause it now. Do your thing. We'll talk about it. All right, so we just finished up the question here. Okay, we want to graph for the values from t less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 5. So remember, this tells us we are not going beyond those values. No arrowheads. You stop at those points. Okay, so we use a calculator, type it in, and I just want to go backwards here and just talk about a few things. So number one, after you graph it, it's going to look like this. So if you go to Analyze Graph and we do our maximum value, okay, it'll give us the maximum value and it'll open the window for us to see everything, okay? If you need to, you can still check the roots, okay, with Analyze Graph again. and then we can go to our table and we can get those values, except we know, like it's right here is 2.5, but we have that point. Okay? Then we're going to graph it. So remember, we're not going beyond those values. So I am starting here, going down, and then stopping right at 0. I'm going here, coming down, stopping right at 0. Hey, not bad. All right. If you need to, go ahead and label. So h equals negative 8t squared plus 40t. Now, technically ours is x and y, so just be aware that like this is the t and the x and the y here, but that's what we're representing. Remember, when you type in your graph, okay, you're going to have to use x and y. X's, not t's here. All right. So we use our, if it says to do it algebraically, you're going to have to use the axis of symmetry to figure out 2.5 here. And then make your statement that the max height is at 2.5 seconds. We're then going to substitute 2.5 in for the equation, okay? You can press the little calculator here to open up what's called the scratch pad. This lets you do calculations in it, and we can just type in and get that answer, all right? So we know this is going to be 50, and that's our max height. And then we can use the graph and actually see where it's hitting to answer this. But if it says algebraically, just factor it, guys, right? Remember we talked about yesterday, get this t squared positive first, then we take out our GCF, and then we have our two factors, we set them equal to 0, and we end up with two answers of 0 and 5. So either way, we should be able to get that answer, okay, algebraically or now graphically. All right, that's it for today, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay healthy. Talk to you later.